room with dust layer in the doorway. As expected, the old lady is unable to enter, and it confirms her suspicions. She plans her next step and tells Mr. Devereaux that they are leaving. Over dinner, Caroline executes her plan by putting a sedative or sleeping drug to Mrs. Devereaux's tea. She also interrogates the old lady for her underlying attention to her husband's condition. But before she explains everything, the potion works and makes Mrs. Devereaux slowly collapse from her seat. The old lady attempts to finish the conjuring spell, but loses her consciousness and passes out. With this, Caroline swiftly looks for the record of the spell and sees strands of her hairs. She hurriedly takes Mr. Devereaux out of the mansion and rushes into her car. But the gates remain secured and locked, which hinders their way out. Tension begins again when Mrs. Devereaux wakes up and searches for the two with a rifle. Since they are unable to leave the mansion, Caroline decides to hide Mr. Devereaux and promises to return to him. The old lady hunts them and tries to shoot Caroline as she runs away in the swamps through the rubble. Then Caroline quickly consults and explains everything to Luke. The said lawyer receives a phone call from Mrs. Devereaux, who shares another side of the story. While she looks in a cabinet, she sees things similar in the attic, including the ring of Justify and the skeleton key. Unexpectedly, Luke emerges in front of her, who strangles and causes her to pass out. With cloth on her mouth and ties on her hand, helpless Caroline regains her consciousness. Luke, a cohort of Mrs. Devereaux, drives and sends her back to the mansion. We can surmise that Mrs. Devereaux and Luke are planning to complete a spell. Hence, they force Caroline to tell where Mr. Devereaux is, but Caroline refuses to do so. But when Caroline suddenly recalls the dust in another room, she declares where Mr. Devereaux is. They engage in a struggle, kicking his face, which allows her to untie herself. She briskly starts layering dust in every corner around the house. Surprisingly, Mrs. Devereaux meets her on the second floor, who blows dust in her face. As they fight with each other, Caroline manages to defend herself and accidentally pushes Mrs. Devereaux off the stairs. After the fight, Caroline grabs a telephone and locks herself in a room. She calls the police and Jill for rescue, but unfortunately, the line is cut. Since she is unable to leave the house because of Luke, she flees to the attic, where a circle of candles and mirrors is waiting for her. She pulls out the conjure protection spell and draws a double circle around her. She hastily recreates the symbol with a piece of chalk and cuts her hair, drops blood from her arm. Abruptly, Mrs. Devereaux enters the room and unfolds a shocking revelation. Mrs. Devereaux declares that she trapped Caroline to get inside to protect her servant. She then unleashes the mirror on Caroline, reflecting the banker's daughter, Mrs. Devereaux, and uses a seal, which leads to an explosion. As they open their eyes, they realize that they switched bodies. The hidden intentions become vivid when Caroline's soul and consciousness appear to be in Mrs. Devereaux's body. Also, Mrs. Devereaux's spirit goes to Caroline and will take the remaining years of her life. The possessed Caroline now sees Mrs. Devereaux, now the real Carol, using the potion to make her paralyzed like Mr. Devereaux. Indeed, that means the previous two servants, Justify and Cecile, had to extend her life, just like they secretly possessed and consumed the banker's two children in the past. The movie ends with Caroline, who is now trapped in Mrs. Devereaux's body, and Luke in Mr. Devereaux's body. They are now both imprisoned in their own bodies with no capacity
meters, turn left.
Hearing the fear evident in Ellen's voice, the nurse stands up and tells her that he will back after informing her doctor not think twice before leaving the room. Seconds later, the doctor tells Ellen that they were trying to teach her brother who looks overseas something about her. The doctor flashes a flashlight to Ellen's eyes, attempting to
Turn left.
the devastating news of her both permanently blind. Chemicals her eyes were exposed to, causing Ellen to cry out in agony. The next day, Detective Bryce interrogates Ellen about the incident, gathering information. Ellen vividly remembers how she acted when she walked towards her car, carrying her violin, which the police did not find. The detective thinks that because she was a well-known violinist, her fans might be the suspects. The detective immediately stops the interrogation and asks her for a piece of advice. Later that day, Ellen's brother informs her about the caregiver and the place she will be staying. Clayton talks to her brother as she listens to him. Nearly after suddenly a knock on the door startles her, but she calms down when Clayton introduces himself. With her permission, Clayton comes in and starts to talk, comparing the place to the adult's story brightly, but Ellen cuts him off and asks about the apartment. Clayton quickly describes its parts and tries to lighten her mood by making a joke, but negativity ruins her mood. Feeling the change of atmosphere, Clayton prepares to leave, insisting that Ellen see him in the kitchen in 30 minutes for lunch. Ellen waits for a few minutes before going out of her room, her hands reaching for the kitchen table when Clayton's loud voice frightens her, so she scolds him for sneaking up on her before eating lunch. Before leaving, Clayton guides Ellen to memorize the place. That night, after a frustrated attempt to reach Sasha, Ellen breathes heavily as the dream of the incident wakes her. Unable to go back to sleep, Ellen sits on her bed where liquid drops on her hand, scaling her. She carefully touches her face with trembling hands, thinking she is crying blood. It's just her imagination. The next day, Clayton brings a caged bird, holding a bright light from its window. Ellen will not appreciate its beauty if it is not from the sun. After naming the bird, Ellen instructs Clayton to follow her to the sliding door on the balcony. She opens the door immediately. A strong wind comes in, but Ellen quickly shuts it off. She then proceeds to the window in front of the dining table, asking Clayton about the difference. Clayton coolly tells her that the window glass on the balcony is thinner than the one in the kitchen, and then informs her about Detective Bryce's voicemail. The voicemail contains the update about her case, which devastates Ellen because she is certain that her ex-husband's client attacked her that night. The detective shares about the group traffic crime scene and missing evidence. Sensing Ellen's mood, Clayton assures her that no one will harm her either. But Ellen quickly rejects his words and proceeds to talk about her ex-husband. As they talk about her ex-husband, Ellen realizes that Clayton did his research on him, but she shrugs it off and continues to talk about the people in her life with a bad memory. Clayton also says she was a well-known child prodigy, consolidating her, but Ellen yells at him because she does not want to remember the past. Before leaving, Clayton leaves Ellen a cane to help her examine her surroundings, which she does while listening to loud classical music. Ellen struggles to sleep that night when she hears the front door open. Footsteps are approaching her room. Ellen nervously goes out of bed and reaches for the phone to dial building security. But unfortunately, no one answers the phone. The doorknob rattles as she calls Sasha, but the same thing happens. Gathering her strength, Ellen bravely goes out of her room, intently listening, but soon realizes that it is just her imagination again. She goes back to her bed, trying to sleep, but the water dripping disturbs her. After turning off the faucet in the bathroom, Ellen touches the bottles of pills in the sink, her mind in confusion whether to take it or not. Coming back to her senses, she puts down the bottle and leaves. Unable
In 200 meters, turn left.
to call as her pride overcomes her fear. Suddenly, a clunking startles her, followed by a woman's sob. Ellen walks towards the vent where the sound is coming from and listens to her neighbors argue. The next
Turn left.
how the woman felt so real, but Clayton insists that it is just her other senses going into overdrive. Ellen then remembers that no one answered her phone call to the building's security and tells Clayton about it. That afternoon, Ellen goes out of her room with
Continue for 3 kilometers.
the next door when she suddenly feels the wind gushing inside the apartment. She immediately goes back to her apartment and opens the door on the balcony. An intense wind bursts inside. Realizing something, Ellen goes out again and leaves the note. The next day, Ellen distractingly talks about her observation while Clayton teaches her how to use the laptop. Clayton looks at her weirdly because her imagination seems a bit over, but then shrugs it off and continues to teach her. but Ellen refuses to learn. Following that, Clayton shares how his mother inspired him to help people like her. His mother was too ill to get out of bed, so she spent hours making bird cages, while Clayton and his sister would act out the stories they would make, making Ellen smile as Clayton comfortably shares it. Clayton then describes the scenes outside the apartment, when suddenly Ellen asks to see his face, which Clayton grants by guiding her hand. Their faces inch away from each other when the elevator bell dings, interrupting their moment. Clayton awkwardly tries to excuse himself as he prepares to leave, but Ellen impartially listens to him. That night, Ellen frustratingly drinks as she listens to her brother's voicemail, when suddenly her neighbor rings the bell. Lana immediately introduces herself and opens the conversation by bringing tea, but Ellen timidly informs Lana of her blindness. Inside, Lana roams her eyes to the apartment, commenting on the artwork and music, which confuses Ellen. Lana instantly changes the subject and smokes inside, offending Ellen. Lana then unintentionally angers and confuses Ellen by asking about her eyes. Realizing Ellen's suspicions, Lana panicky leaves, but Ellen holds her, shocked to feel her shaking and hear her voice trembling. Then Ellen touches Lana's face, her scar frightening Ellen, but Lana firmly holds Ellen's arm and quietly advises her not to trust anyone and leaves. Ellen confusingly runs after Lana when they hear the elevator bell dings. A man, Lana's husband, is inside. Lana quickly goes back into her apartment, while Ellen scarily locks her door. Following that, Ellen calls Clayton to inform him about her encounter with Lana and the fresh scar on her face, Ellen insisting that Lana's husband bruised Lana on purpose. However, Clayton defends Lana's husband, which frustrates Ellen, because Clayton believes in Lana's husband more than her. Out of frustration, Ellen calls Detective Rice. The next day, Ellen argues with Detective Rice about Lana's case, but the detective reports that Lana had a history of self-harming. Unable to convince anyone, Ellen frustratingly ends the call, when suddenly she hears the car honking and its alarm blaring again. The same day, Ellen shares her observation about the sounds outside, happening simultaneously every day. After lighting the incense, Clayton gives the lighter to Ellen, confusing her as she does not own one, but soon realizes that it is Lana's. The next day, Ellen anxiously waits for the sounds to happen, which it does. Currently, Clayton's arrived. Ellen shushes Clayton and asks him to describe the scene outside, overly suspicious about it. But Clayton's words calm her, and Ellen takes his hand and puts it on top of her chest, putting a smile on Clayton's face. That night, vivid scenes of the attack play in her head. Lost in her thoughts, Ellen reaches for the pills on the sink and tries to take some, but soon stops herself. Unable to sleep, Ellen listens to her laptop as it tells her the search results of Lana's husband. When she hears the elevator bell ding, Ellen goes out and apologizes to Lana, but instead, the voice of Lana's husband terrifies Ellen. So she quickly backs up, sensing the action of Lana's husband when her laptop blurts out the search results. Ellen panicky shuts it down, forgetting to close her door, while Lana's husband stands outside, threatening her. After calling Clayton, Ellen informs him about the threat of Lana's husband, enraging Clayton. But Ellen stops him and asks about his words on the phone call instead. Clayton tries to change the subject, but Ellen insists on her question, making Clayton confess his feelings to her. Shocked by the revelation, Ellen sighs heavily and sips from her drink while Clayton continues to talk. Ellen cuts off Clayton, indirectly confessing her feelings to him, but when Clayton kisses her, Ellen breaks it. Because of her continuous wrong judgment on everything, Ellen doubts her feelings and demands that she and Clayton start over professionally, which, however, upsets Clayton. Later that night, while Ellen is frustrated because she cannot reach Sasha, she hears the front door opening and goes out to apologize to Clayton. However, when she hears nothing, Ellen hesitantly backs up, thinking it might be Lena's husband or the person who caused her blindness. Ellen quickly runs to her room, dials 911 while the attacker barges in and strangles her. Her head is weary. Ellen hears the siren wailing and the paramedic calling her. The paramedic ignorantly flashes a light to her while telling her about the risk. The pain in her neck from the strangulation catches the paramedic's attention, but he sees no mark and lets Clayton.
In 200 meters, turn right onto National Highway 34.
Thinks that it is the same man who attacked her that night. But Clayton dismisses her suspicion and tells her that her constant drinking might be the cause of hallucinations. Hurt by Clayton's accusation, Ellen instructs him to call the
Turn right onto National Highway 34.
on a forced entry, thinking Clayton is the suspect. Ellen quickly cuts him off, offended by the detective's accusation, so Detective Rice proceeds to update her about the case.
Continue on National Highway 34 for 95 kilometers.
Detective continues despite Ellen's reaction. It turns out Sasha has a record for stalking and assaulting a coworker's wife. Dumbfounded with the information, Ellen cannot speak when she remembers the person attacking her the same night she went blind. Ellen persistently argues with Detective Bryce that someone did break into her apartment and harm her, but the detective is unconvinced. The detective reminds Ellen to thank Clayton for not putting her on suicide watch and leaves. Ellen instructs Clayton to take the day off the morning after, lying to him about calling her brother. Ellen breaks down in front of her laptop as she leaves an apology to her brother, Sasha, and Clayton. Ellen loses her will to live and walks towards the balcony, still crying. She sits on the edge and jumps into the air, attempting to end her life. Back to the present day after the suicide attempt, Ellen wakes up in her room where Harry came. She stands up to scan the room as she hears the noises outside. Ellen looks for the edge of her balcony with her trembling hands, gripping it as she climbs up. Panicking, Ellen goes out to use the elevator, but fails, so she goes back in, sobbing, realizing everything is a lie. Following that, Ellen finds the courage to go to Lana's apartment when she bumps into her at the elevator. Surprisingly, Ellen sternly tells Lana that she left something in her apartment and uses Lana's lighter to confess something to her. Down reaching the lighter, Ellen reveals her discovery of the place and bombards Lana with questions. Ellen hopingly asks Lana how to get out, but Lana's husband interrupts them, and Lana hesitantly leaves Ellen behind for risking a bleeding. Shortly after, Clayton comes in and sees the bleeding, shooting her self-harming. Meanwhile, Ellen silently backs up as she suspects Clayton, disclosing her doubts to him. She confronts Clayton about the lies, while Clayton defends himself, trying to gain Ellen's trust. Ellen pretends to believe Clayton, but with a plan in her mind. Clayton shocks Ellen when he gives her the violin in the kitchen, but Ellen quickly hides it. Acting as if nothing happened, Clayton tries to kiss Ellen, but the oven beeping stops him. Before leaving, Clayton knocks on the table twice, making Ellen recall her memories. The nurse knocked twice as Clayton did before leaving her. Ellen's memories come to her all at once, and she realizes that everyone she met from the hospital to the apartment is connected to Clayton. Hiding her suspicion, Ellen offers to make the drinks while Clayton sits, talking about the belt, unaware of her plan. Then Ellen purposely drops the cup and asks Clayton to help her, while she quickly grabs the knife rack and smacks him with it twice. Then Ellen steals Clayton's keys and tries to open the elevator, but fails. So she goes back in to search Clayton's bag, where she finds a taser. Ellen keeps the taser and quickly goes out to open Lana's apartment. Inside, Ellen sweeps her cane and discovers a bunch of clothes Clayton used to deceive her. Suddenly, she hears Lana whimpering and runs after her while Clayton searches for her. Ellen finds Lana sitting on a hospital bed and convinces her to escape together. However, Lana remains aloof and reveals how Ellen saved her brother from the dark. Suddenly, the building alarm goes off, and Clayton's voice roars inside the apartment, scaring both of them. Determined to help Ellen, Lana reveals a secret way out and commands her to leave without her. Ellen agitatedly walks back when she stumbles into Clayton, leaving her unconscious. Clayton drags Ellen into his control room, where he reveals his obsession with her. It's revealed that Clayton's mother was unwell throughout his childhood, and his father abused him often and forbade him to go out, leaving him nothing but his imagination. Luckily, little Lana would sneak out and let him listen to the soft music his mother played for him. Music is Ellen's. The music saved Clayton from the abuse he experienced as a child. After his revelation, Ellen pretends to agree with Clayton's reason, controlling him, and when he turns his back on her, she immediately uses the taser on Clayton. Ellen hysterically opens the vent, looking for a way out, but instead finds a vial inside. Ellen searches for a way out when Clayton grabs her hair and engages in a violent fight. Ellen struggles to free herself from Clayton's tight grip when she unexpectedly spits the liquid from the vial to Clayton's eyes, leaving him sightless. Together with Lana, Ellen looks at Clayton, who is still obsessing about her. Following that, Ellen cries as Lana frees her. The movie ends with Ellen waiting to retake the stage 6 months after the incident, but still blind. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out. Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a psychological thriller film, Marionette. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Marianne is a famous psychologist. A few years back, during an outing with her loving husband, short-named husband, the car stalled at a fork in the road. A kind man offered them a ride. Unfortunately, they ended up in a car accident, killing her husband. Marianne has spent her days in tears following the tragedy. To start anew, Marianne moves from upstate New York to Scotland. The trauma wounds her so much. Time and again, she wonders what would happen if she takes another path according to husband's advice. She wishes for the revival of husband, but that will never happen. Marianne soon joins a psychology clinic in Scotland. Her first client is Manny, a boy with golden curly hair who lost both parents and stays with a foster family. Suffering from severe autism, Manny seldom talks. He spends most of his time drawing. Marianne tries to make some conversation about his drawings. That trick pays off. Manny claims that he can make disasters happen. At once, Marianne does not take his words seriously. That night, when she drives through a tunnel, she witnesses a car accident that takes away several lives. To her shock, she finds one of Manny's drawings prophesying the car accident. In his sketch, a doggy pig is watching the car accident. Obviously, the fat pig refers to Marianne. Immediately after, Marianne questions Manny if he draws it based on the news report. However, Manny replies that he makes the car accident happen, and without his interference, Marianne would not be there. Needless to say, Marianne does not believe his smelly bullshit. In her opinion, it is possible to foretell an upcoming disaster, but it is not possible to create one as he wishes. Undaunted, Manny tells Marianne there is a gun in her drawer. Marianne denies it, for she has never seen any gun there. Comes evening, Marianne pulls open the drawer and finds a gun. Frightened, she checks with the office manager if Manny has entered her office. Manager does not remember seeing him. Touching the gun, Marianne ponders how it emerges out of thin air. Later on another note, Marianne signs up for a book club. They often discuss profound theories such as the parallel universe theory and Schrodinger's cat. Imagine putting a cat in a sealed box with deadly radiation. If the radiation decays, the cat will die. If the radiation doesn't decay, the cat is alive. The experiment suggests that cats live or die depending on human observation. Without observation, the cat is both alive and dead in the box. Both realities exist at the same time. If you observe it, it immediately splits into two parallel worlds. The cat is either dead or alive. They believe that consciousness determines the existence and even creates two different universes. As a child psychologist, Marianne is not interested in these discussions, but she is interested in a handsome man rich in hormones and beards, nicknamed Beardy Hormone. The two chat in perfect harmony. It is not easy for her to meet a hormone mate. Beardy Hormone invites Marianne in for a cup of coffee, but Marianne still grieves over her late husband and is not ready to see another man right now. She cannot tell if she has fallen for Beardy Hormone. Applying the theory of Schrodinger's cat, she is both willing and unwilling to explore the new relationship. After some consideration, she decides to give it a miss. However, a series of weird occurrences changes Marianne's mind. The next day after work, she receives a stranger's call. The man tells Marianne she must kill him, or else he will kill her. Before Marianne asks who she should kill, the man hangs it up. Other than that, the air ducts in her house give off strange noises. Marianne tries to investigate, but to no avail. Feeling insecure, Marianne returns to the book club and agrees to date Beardy Hormone. Their relationship has grown by leaps and bounds. Together, they spend sweet time discussing poems and sailing. At the clinic's meeting, Marianne informs her colleagues that someone has instructed her to kill a person. She wonders if anyone is playing a prank on her. The clinic director is apparently disturbed by such news, but he tells Marianne not to care about it. Marianne intuitively knows that it is not something small, so she looks for Director privately and probes further. Director reveals that it should be from Manny's previous doctor, short-named Doctor. 2 months ago, this man got delusional and tried to set himself on fire. Ended up in a mental hospital with severe burns. Director assures her that Doctor's words do not make sense. Marianne has many questions unanswered. She wants to know why Doctor burnt himself and who she should kill. All this must have to do with Manny. Checking Doctor's diary, Marianne finds him writing that Manny's dream is real. She is now more curious about Manny's supernatural ability. During their session, Manny has been doodling creepy scenes of accidents and disasters. When asked why he favors such themes, Manny plainly says he wants them to take place. And then, he draws a picture of a man falling into the sea and writes down the name of Beardy Hormone on the paper. Marianne's heart almost falls out. She checks with Manny if the man is swimming. Manny coldly replies that no, he will be drowned to death. That sends a shiver down her spine. She recalls Manny's ability to prophesy disaster in the previous car accident. If what Manny says is true, she must prevent Beardy Hormone from dying. So Marianne follows Manny to his house. Manny's foster mom introduces Manny as a kid who has never uttered a word. Manny's father died in a car accident. Unable to grapple with the loss, Manny's mother committed suicide in the car. That is possibly why Manny is so into drawing gloomy pictures of disasters and accidents. Marianne cannot wait to clear her doubts. She asks Manny why he puts a gun in her drawer. Manny's answer is rather ambiguous. He says there is no gun in the drawer. It only appears after Marianne looks at it. The gun is similar to Schrodinger's cat. As long as Marianne observes it, the gun exists. Marianne is not convinced at all. She bangs against the table and questions Manny about how he knows about Beardy Hormone and why he curses him. In terror, Manny starts screaming like he is having a seizure. While the foster mom rushes in to pacify Manny, Marianne discovers a new pain. It is about a fat pig committing suicide with a gun. Back home, Marianne wants to alert her boyfriend. However, no one picks up the phone. Meanwhile, the TV news reports about a flood that kills more than 2,500 people. Marianne is reminded that Manny drew about the flood yesterday. Anxious, she stumbles to her desk and sorts out that drawing. On it, the number 25 is glaring at her. Marianne cannot help but believe that Manny has the power to mess up her life. Now, finding her boyfriend is the top priority. So Marianne visits his house. He is not in. She goes to the book club, but he is not there. She even ventures to the harbor at late night and searches the boat, but it all proves futile. Marianne leaves a voice message to her boyfriend, telling him not to sail into the sea. Seeking a proper solution, Marianne decides to meet Doctor at the mental hospital. Doctor is a man full of scars on his face. Just one glance, he knows where Marianne is coming from. Doctor reveals that Manny is able to manipulate the future and make his drawing come true. Manny is God in this world. The gun in Marianne's drawer, the noises from the air ducts, and the sudden deaths of enclosed ones are all within Manny's control. He toys his target like a marionette until the target is killed. The only way to stop him is to murder him. Doctor moves upstairs upon finishing his words. Marianne is left seating in the vacant room. Her blood runs cold after hearing Doctor's message. She comes to realize that Manny preys on her, and she will die like the fat pig in his picture. Gathering her wits together, Marianne discovers that Doctor is reading the book Second Death. She recalls that Manny has a picture of the same theme. Marianne senses that Doctor must be in danger and rushes to the rooftop. As she watches, Doctor jumps off the building, just like what is drawn by Manny. In shock, Marianne cannot even stand firm. This incident all the more confirms the fact that Manny is able to control the future. So Marianne rushes to the harbor in car and waits for her boyfriend by their boat. She leaves a handwritten note on the boat, warning him not to go into the sea. A thought flashes across her mind. If she was to release the boat, Beardy Hormone would not be able to sail. So Marianne unties the rope. And then she visits the archives room at the clinic for the previous medical records of Manny. Flipping through the notes, she finds another painting. It depicts a man sleeping in a boat, implying to Marianne that Beardy Hormone might be sleeping in the boat. Marianne drives back to the harbor. A group of men crowd at the seashore to discuss a tragedy. It is said that a boat without ropes was driven ashore and wrecked. One fisherman even reports that the victim's girlfriend was set the boat free last night. Marianne cannot imagine that her relief efforts accidentally killed Beardy Hormone. Right then, she recalls seeing a picture of a doggy pig captured by a policeman. Beside them, a fisherman is sitting on a stone. The setting is exactly the same as her current situation. Marianne realizes that she will be arrested soon, so she immediately leaves the harbor. On her way back to the city, Marianne remembers many details about Manny. Doctor has ever noted down their conversation. On one occasion, Manny said that he is the ruler of this word. He is able to manipulate and ruin everything. The reason why he regards himself as a god and kills others through his painting is that he does not want to receive any mental treatment. He hates the world. Manny used to tell Doctor he would destroy the clinic, the hospital, the whole world, and the adults who neglect him. Up to this point in time, Marianne fully submits to the Doctor's advice. She must kill Manny to restore the order in her life. Therefore, she breaks into Manny's house and snatches him from the hands of his foster mom. To Marianne, the most depressing curse is that she would commit suicide. She cannot see why she is chosen for the torture. Enraged, she slaps Manny and questions him if he could see this coming. Confused, Manny wants to know why Marianne kidnaps him. Immediately after, Marianne points her gun at him, demanding to have her normal life back. In the meantime, she realizes a police's car is chasing them. Marianne turns the car around and takes Manny into a desolate factory. She threatens Manny to restart her life. However, Manny shakes his head, saying it is too late. He explains that from the time she makes her choice to open the drawer, her fate is set. He does not control anyone's actions. He warns Marianne not to shoot, otherwise everything will disappear. She's like Schrodinger's cat right now, in a quantum superposition of shooting and not shooting. In the end, she pulls the trigger on impulse. Right after that, she regrets it. It is too much for her to kill 2 lives in a day. She does not have any hope in life. Breaking down, she picks up the gun to kill herself. So far, what has taken place matches Manny's drawing. Strangely enough, Marianne somehow knows that she is not dead. Instead, she feels like having a dreadful nightmare. When she wakes up later, she finds herself to be lying on the operating table in New York. It turns out that she was the one severely injured in the car accident with her husband. To her unbelief, her husband is still alive. Husband tells her that she has been unconscious during the past few days. Marianne holds husband's hand, feeling relieved that she is able to reset her life. Marianne dismisses all the